Sean, tell me when are we ready to go? Okay. What's your title, Chairman? President. Is it a title? How about you? Multi-purpose hero. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Yeah, I do. Yeah, you do. What difference does it make, right? Okay. We get the music down. But I'm not sure we want that elevator to be behind us. This is a webinar. Hello? Welcome to the third of a monthly series called the Sports Business Insider Series that started in Central Florida in October and in Phoenix in November. This is the third. There will be one a month around the country, basically highlighting the history and the developments of sports as an economic and tourism and branding engine in various locales. And we'll have each of the panelists speak about their various issues in a minute. Guarantee this is one of the best panels we've ever had. From my right to your left, Matt Becherer, president of Homestead-Miami Speedway, Butch Buchholz, the chairman of the WGC Doral and UTG, undisputed tennis guru. Eric Woolworth, the senior vice president of business operations for the Heat. Did I get that right? Something like that. He runs the Miami Heat. And Nat Moore, who is a man of all seasons, Orange Bowl committee, Miami Dolphins, special projects, senior vice president, former Miami High, Miami Edison, sorry about that, and everywhere else that you can get. That's a terrible mistake. I understand that. So I'm Rick Horrow. I grew up in South Florida and have spent enough time in South Florida just to give some overall perspective and landscape about the history of South Florida sports and the mega events that have added to the economic and cultural history. And I just want to take us back very quickly to the landscape in the mid-'60s, in 1965 and 1966. We have a Miami Marlins, who were the team that played at what was then Miami Stadium, Bobby Maduro Stadium. And I just want to bring to your attention that the program cost 10 cents, give you some perspective. A year before, and it's hard to believe this, but there was a runner-up bowl in this world of immediate gratification. Can you imagine the championship losers playing in a runner-up bowl? Well, they had it the Orange Bowl for a number of years. This is the program between the St. Louis Cardinals and Green Bay Packers in 1965. That was our professional sport at the time. In 1966, Joe Robbie made a courageous decision and decided to make sure that the Miami Dolphins existed as a AFL franchise, ultimately expanding into the NFL. And the Raiders beat the Dolphins 23-14, another 50-cent program. By the way, Tom Nomina, who was a defensive lineman for the Dolphins, was the biggest guy, weight-wise, in the program, weighing in at 260. Now that's probably half of the weight of an offensive lineman. There are not a lot of other issues in here, but there were about 27,000 people who were at that game, and it was either Dick Wood or George Wilson or Rick Norton or a combination of those pre-Bob Greasy quarterbacks that led South Florida and Miami to a Major League sports franchise. On October 16 of that year, the Miami Dolphins had their first win. They beat the Denver Broncos, the Peyton Manning-less Denver Broncos, 24-7 at a nearly sold-out Orange Bowl. Those were major times in 1966. Dade and Broward County, by the way, as a total population, had a little bit over 900,000. Hard to imagine that. And by the way, Ted Arison birthed his first MS Sunward 1 in 1966, which kind of gives you some perspective. I know personally firsthand how important South Florida sports was. My dad died of melanoma in March of 1966, and my last visit was talking about the various players who would play for the Dolphins 6 months later, and he gave me the tickets, and he knew he wouldn't make it, and I did, and it left a indelible mark on my life, and I suspect the Dolphins and the history of sports leaves that kind of legacy in South Florida as well for a lot of other people. Segue to 1968, the Packers and the Raiders, and by the way, it was called the AFL versus NFL World Championship game. Yeah, it was Super Bowl II, and the Packers won it, but it ushered in a time of unprecedented economic prosperity, and we've now had 9 other
10.
Super
So
Bowls,
10
total Super Bowls in South Florida after that 1968 game. The final Dolphin prop, 1972, September 10, the last Miami preseason game, they played the Minnesota Vikings, and you look at the predictions, and the Dolphins were predicted to win their division, but go 11-3 in the regular season. Well, they didn't disappoint. They went 14-0 and then 3 others for the only undefeated perfect season in NFL history. And so it's not just, by the way, as we know, the Dolphins. You segue to August of 1986, and you have July of 1984, and you have the first proposal for a Miami Convention and Sports Complex when I was the Miami Sports and Exhibition Authority director, and Nat reminds me that I guess I was his boss, he was on the board at the time, when we were talking about the Miami Convention Center and a company that was going to build an arena in Overtown that ended up being funded for about $40 million, and we'll talk about the evolution of it. You say what you want about that, but it leads to the expansion Miami Heat. And one of the other issues about that, by the way, is 1986, the first South Florida NBA feasibility study, which is a loose feasibility study, but as we talked about earlier, they don't matter anyway. The bottom line was Ted Arison's vision and his commitment led South Florida into an unprecedented time of a first non-second league expansion, meaning Dolphins being AFL. This was the real deal. This was the NBA. And this was the first logo that was ever done as far as bringing the NBA to South Florida. And we had a preseason game at the Knight Center when by the time the promoters came in, they realized it was too late to change it, but there were only 3 walls, and we put a mat up against it, so Wes Unseld couldn't jump anyway at the time, so it really didn't matter. But at the end of the day, this was the jersey or the shirt, and I'm proud to say this hasn't been washed in 27 years, so there, Bush, you can take that. We don't just have basketball, by the way. We're now talking about 1983-84, where the sea change was the Doral Eastern Open, who started in 1962, and Butch and others know it well. It became the Ryder Open in the early 80s, and basically began the start of the Florida swing. And if you could say any one cataclysmic event, that sponsorship and Tony Burns and others who made that commitment at Ryder put golf on the map in a larger way that now leads to a tremendous economic impact in South Florida. That February of '85, Butch Buchholz enters the scene at Lavers Tennis Center with an event that started in Delray and then moved to Boca and then looked at a number of other opportunities, a couple of years in Delray. Sorry, I'm wrong. Butch will tell the story. But the Lipton's International Players Championship. And Butch is your classic entrepreneur, very credible, very important, and I was honored to be one of the 13 people on his executive committee, and he told us we were all going to wear jackets and be proud as being part of that event. Problem is, Butch didn't have enough money for the real jackets, so what he did is, here is the first Lipton International tag on, and it was basically saying, yeah, bring your own jacket and put this on and walk around with it. And listen, between 1985 and today, that event has come a long way. And then November 3, 1995, the first opening of the Homestead-Miami International Speedway, Ralph Sanchez and those who were pioneers and ISC buying it. The renaissance of it is amazing. We'll talk about it a little more. But the year to the date after Katrina, right? Interesting mix, the year to the date after Andrew, August 24 of 93, ground was broken on a major renovation catalyst called Homestead-Miami International Speedway. And November 4 and November 5 of 95, Jeffrey Bodine wins a truck race and Dale Jarrett wins the NASCAR Busch Series race, and that basically starts that facility. So what do all those events very quickly have in common? Well, they all overcame a presumption of failure. In South Florida, we all are excited about being here, but let's remember, before this all happened, there were 21 facility opportunities, historically, look it up, 6 failed teams, 16 failed events, and all with promoters that were absolutely going to do it. These guys and the history and legacy of the events actually did it. Well, everybody's from somewhere else here. There's no general obligation to deal with this past generations. Everybody's from Pittsburgh or from New York or from Philly, and you gave it the office in those communities. We have to overcome that. This is a political and cultural melting pot. That's putting it nicely. We all understood the difficulties of how to put these deals together, but these people survived and thrived. The diversions and distractions. You go to the early bird dinner and you understand this is a seasonal town, and you understand how difficult it is to compete for the entertainment dollar in South Florida. And there are geographical rivalries. So when I was running the Miami Sports Authority, God forbid we'd go up to Palm Beach, pack your bags, it's a day trip, and Homestead was nowhere to be found. And all of these people overcame that. Why? Well, tenacity. Joe Robbie, Wayne Huizinga, John Henry, Ron Frazier, Ted Arison, all of those people are very important in the history of South Florida sports as they represent things to build on. And also, there were catalysts for all of this, special sparks. The 17-0 Dolphin team, the first championship, and then LeBron, after the team, by the way, lost 19 straight in the first season. We won't talk about that. The WGC Doral commitment in 1999, and the 13th year of Homestead International Speedway now, and their major sea change, which will happen this next year, with the chase for the championship format being winner take all, which is huge for Homestead, huge for NASCAR, huge for ISC, and you'll hear about that. So in conclusion, here's the bottom line. Remember the sleepy town we talked about in 1966? Well, now there's nearly 6 million people in 3 counties, nearly 30 million tickets distributed for Miami Dolphin games since its inception, over 20 million for the Heat and the Arena since its inception. Homestead-Miami International Speedway annual economic impact of over $251 million every year, with 280 events there, and 2/3 of the people coming in from outside the region. And then, cumulatively, the Florida Sports Foundation and other green eye shade folks who study this stuff talk about a $36 billion sports and recreation industry with 450,000 jobs directly attributed, not to mention the branding, the international recognition, the melting pot, and everybody having stories like me and with my dad, how South Florida brings people together, not tears them apart. So from that perspective, we're really excited about you all being here and sharing some of the history of South Florida sports with us. Thank you again. The first perspective has to be the Miami Dolphins, and he has many, many hats. Played for 13 years, Super Bowls 17 and 19. Testament to his longevity and the fact that, as he said earlier, people don't stay with the same team today, but he is second all-time on the team touchdown reception list with 74. But he wears many hats: Orange Bowl committee, special projects for the Dolphins, lifetime Miami, and Nat Moore. So Nat, you know, from your perspective, just to kind of kick it off, the 66 expansion, where were you in 66?
Where was I in 66? Let
Yeah.
me think about this, because you've said everything else I was going to say.
No, but you're going to say it from your
No,
perspective.
I was actually a sophomore in high school at Miami Edison at that point, and was very excited about the Dolphins coming to town. I was a big fan of the Baltimore Colts at that time, and you know, to have professional football come to South Florida. Back in those days, we just called it Miami. But to have it come to South Florida was really special, especially for a young man that envisioned one day playing at that level. You know, the idea of having a chance to meet a professional football player gives you even more incentive to work at it, and I was able to do that because I met Jimmy Warren.
Give me your perspective of what the next 6 years meant to you, and you know you're there watching Dolphin perfection. You know, give us your reactions to that.
Well, let's start with the first 4 years, which is 1966 through 69. You know that sound like three, but you add one because you count all those years. Yeah. This team was 15-39. And won. Now, as much as I love having this team here in South Florida, I was like all other typical fans. I'd watch Baltimore on TV, and every now and then I'd go to the game. And back in those days, you could give away tickets, and it was still hard to get people to go. It was a struggling football team that we were very happy to have, but nobody really identified with them. And lo and behold, remember I said I loved the Baltimore Colts back in those days? Well, guess who we went out and got? We went out and got a guy named Don Shula, who had been the coach in Baltimore. And he came in and he took that group of misfits, that's what I like to call them, a group of misfits that couldn't get out of their own way. They were 10-5 the first year, and they ended up going to the Super Bowl the following 3 years. They still hold the best winning percentage record in football history over a 4-year span, which was 54-11-1. Oh, by the way, those misfit guys that didn't know how to play back in those days was Bob Greasy, Hall of Famer, Larry Zonka, Hall of Famer, Larry Little, Hall of Famer, Jim Langer, Hall of Famer, Nick Bonacani, Hall of Famer. You had a coach come in, teach them how to be a team, teach them to play together, and they became perfect. And this community went crazy. The Dolphins was the community. And to Joe Robbie's credit, he made sure that his players and the entire team became a fabric of the community. And up until 1996, I think Sheila left in 1996, this team was just an intricate part of South Florida. So those 4 years was the catalyst to what we see professional sports is today, because it was the first professional team to be that successful and to bring championships to South Florida.
And, you know, it's interesting. Everybody, it's human nature, takes things for granted that they know are not going to leave. And so the Dolphins, this is 47th year
Yes, actually going into our 48th year.
48th, 50th is going to be a heck of a celebration, we know that. But is it easy, how would you put into words the impact, economic, cultural, any other way, of what the Dolphins have meant to South Florida for nearly a half a century?
Well, I think what you've got to look at is not just the Miami Dolphins and what they do. It's also about the stadium and all the events and everything that comes to South Florida in Sun Life Stadium. But when you look back over that 48-year period and you think that you've had 10 Super Bowls, we've been very fortunate that in the last 10, 12 years, 15 years, somewhere in there, we've had the Orange Bowl being played at Sun Life Stadium and have won and have crowned 4 national championships. Now, there's a study that was published, and it basically talked about that anytime you had a Super Bowl, you're looking at somewhere between $300 and $450 million of economical impact to South Florida. You know, when you look at a game like we had in 2012 with Alabama and Notre Dame, you know, between media and unique visitors to our community, it was close to $300 million of economical impact. You know, the bottom line is when you can bring major events to South Florida, big events, you basically are really creating the number one thing that Florida's about. Anybody know anything about Florida? Number one thing is tourism. And that's what major events do. They bring tourism. They bring jobs. They bring construction. You know, when you think about it, and I'm kind of old. So is Butch over there. Butch older than me. So, you know, we sort of hang out together. But when you think about South Florida, the number one industry has always and always will be tourism. The number two industry is construction. We build a lot. So whether it's building stadiums, whether it's building facilities, it's important to the fabric of South Florida to keep us moving in the right direction.
You know, it's an interesting point. There's no exclusion on this panel, but I personally think, with 800 years of experience doing this, that the groups that have the most compelling economic and intangible impact stories to tell, branding, globalization, economics, construction, recreation, are here on this panel. Again, not to exclude anybody. Having said that, it's a very difficult political environment today within which to operate. There's a lot of prior toxicity, let's put it that way. There's a lot of expectations that haven't been met. And so from that perspective, what has to happen, I guess, stadium-wise, from your perspective, you know, got to deal with it head-on, to get back into a regular Super Bowl rotation?
Well, you know, we went one time where we missed 10 years of an opportunity to host a Super Bowl. And in those days, it was about $200 million of economic impact. And Wayne Huizenga, Joe Robbie, at that point, rebuilt or built Sun Life as it is today. And we were back in the mix. And we were getting a Super Bowl an average of every 4 years. And then when Wayne Huizenga took over, he came in and did a refurbishment. And we got a Super Bowl in 2007, 2010. Now they're saying that we are an antiquated facility. Doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it, but according to the other facilities that have been built around the country, we're the oldest of our kind. And because of that, we're now on the outside looking in. You know, there is 10 cities now that are in the mix to get Super Bowls and national championship games, college national championship games. And much as I hate to say it, the last 5 times we have bidded, we've lost. And we just lost the bid for the national championship game to one of our competitors right here in the state of Florida, Tampa. Tampa is one of the 10 cities that right now have a better opportunity to get these type of events because their facility was built after or refurbished after ours. It's really kind of simple.
And there's another perspective about it. Not only are Super Bowls front and center, but there are now 3 opportunities to get the big-time commitment from the college perspective. The games will rotate, but there are semifinal games now and a final game, and we lost out on that too.
Yeah, well, we have semifinals. One of the good things about the BCS and the Orange Bowl being a part of a 4-bowl mix is that we will get 4, if I'm not, I mean 2 of the, no, we get 3. We'll get 3 semifinals games in the 12-year history. We had hoped to get 2 national championship games, but we didn't get the first one. We will continue to bid. We will continue to try and bring big events here to South Florida. I know the Orange Bowl is committed. I've served on that for many, many years. And I know that the Miami Dolphins and the Super Bowl host committee here in South Florida are committed. So we will continue to knock on the doors. We're actually going to bid for the 2019 Super Bowl, which, believe it or not, will be a 9-year run without a Super Bowl, that's only happened once before. Now, you know, when you look at Sun Life, and it's not just about Super Bowls, it's not just about national championship games or Pro Bowls, et cetera, you're talking about the ability to bring in, you know, the soccer, which we've been very successful the last couple of years. We've got the ICC coming in again in August. We host a soccer match in June where we've got Ecuador and England. I mean, concerts, games. We're actually got a new event this year, Butch, and you got to come to this one because Greasy twisted my arm to make me go in and ask the powers to be to host this. It's called the American Invitation Equestrian Show. In other words, we're going to take Lake Worth and bring them down to Sun Life, and we're going to have the horses jumping in Sun Life Stadium. And it's only fitting because the next week does their spring game, so the field will be in perfect shape for
There's a gator. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, that's Nat Moore, okay? And if you remember, thank you, Nat. All right. By the way, show of hands, how many of you, we shouldn't say how many of you were alive in '84, that's not a good thing. How many of you were in South Florida in '84? So you may not remember this. In the top 10 list of NFL films have the hell beat out of them coming across the middle hits, that guy against the Jets was, you remember that kind of helicopter? Yeah, everybody remembers. That's Nat's claim to fame, and he's spent the next 60 years trying to live out from under that considerable shadow. So anyway, yeah, right. Good friend. Nat's great. Beginning his 18th season with the Heat Group and 12th at the helm as President Business Operations, I will say that 100 times and get it right, Eric Woolworth has been the guiding business force behind the Heat, along with a dynamic team of Ted Arrison's legacy, Mickey, obviously. And so we're excited to have Eric Woolworth here to talk about the Miami Heat. Tell the elevator speech story from your perspective of the early days of the Miami Heat. I know a lot of it's historical if you want to hear, but the whole legacy of the Heat in this community, what it's meant to the community from your perspective.
Well, I wasn't here in '88
Right.
when you were. I got here in '95, just right after the Arrisons bought the controlling interest of the team. You know, I think it's hard to talk about the legacy because we feel like we're building it in the present. But I hope someday that the legacy of the Heat is that it was an organization that was built the right way. That the Arrisons hired good people, let them do their job, and really most of the executives at the team haven't left. We've had the same team in place, had tremendous continuity. And Nat talked a little bit about being part of the fabric of the community. We feel like we have become part of the fabric of the community, in large part because the Arisons, I think, recognized early on that while they have both the joy that comes around along with owning the team, as long as all the obligations, and it's their money that we lose. There's an aspect to owning a professional sports team that is about community ownership and responsibility to the community to do the right things and be an important part of building positive things in the community, and that's what we've tried to do, and I think pretty successfully.
Stewardship, managership, legacy. It's interesting that Ted Arison was the undisputed father of pro basketball in South Florida. It was his mission and statement in front of David Stern at NBA meetings where, candidly, he wasn't here, but there were destined 3 expansion franchises, and it was Orlando, Minnesota, and Charlotte, and Ted Arison's meeting with David Stern basically single-handedly committed the 4th. And when you look at all of the people that take credit, and there is family ownership now, but it is very clear who the person was who delivered the Miami Heat to Miami, even though that person was not a basketball fan, but he was an economic impact fan, and he was a tourism fan, and that was very important as well. Your legacy, wrong words, the management style understands that this town wants winners, and it wants winners constantly. And talk about taking something for granted. You know, you wake up out of bed, you have the best player maybe in the history of the NBA, certainly on today, and you play on and on and on about winning. How do you prepare for the next series of long-term expectations, let's say, for the Heat?
That's a good question. I've actually got some of my executive team here today, and they would tell you we spend more time talking about what we're going to do in the next down cycle than we do on how to maximize revenue now. And I think, you know, LeBron and Dwayne and Chris and the entire team we have now has provided us a platform to do things that 10 years ago we didn't think we could do, both here locally and around the world. So I think it's about trying to use those things and those initiatives to create a real legacy brand, like the Lakers or the Celtics in our league or the Cowboys. That's what we want the Miami Heat to become, and that's where we're trying to go.
And we talked about before business strategies, expectations as well. We're all understanding that this is a legacy for the community, but people think that it's a big market team with big market economics. We talked about that before. The challenges are pretty significant, not only the discretionary dollars, but what you have to begin with here. So speak about where the Heat is in the kind of market pecking order, how difficult it is for you to run the ship.
This is one of my favorite topics. Okay, so Adam Silver, who's our new commissioner, and I have been talking for a couple of years, since 2010, since we got LeBron, that there's been a lot of media attention placed on Miami, and even some of the other owners in the league tend to talk about us as a big market team. But the fact is, we are 16, 17, or 18 in size, just in the NBA, depending on how many people came or went that week from Minneapolis and from Phoenix. And we have a lot more in common with Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Sacramento, and Utah than we do with New York, LA, and Chicago. And that's both from a population perspective and from a Fortune 500 companies being headquartered here, just all the demographics. We've got 2 million people in the Miami area. I think Oklahoma City's 1-2, San Antonio 1-2, 1-3. New York's 14. You know, from a scale perspective, we are a really successful small to mid-market team, and so that's how we judge ourselves. That's not really how we're treated under the economics of the NBA. There's a new revenue sharing plan, and we're treated like a big market, but we're not.
So New York has 7 times the population, and you have,
Correct.
what, twice as many wins as the next?
Yeah.
That's another story. We'll deal with that. We'll deal with that another day. International globalization, everybody talks about it. South Florida has always been uniquely positioned as the gateway to South America, to Europe, to the Far East, et cetera, et cetera. Give us your perspective on how the Heat has helped move that process forward a bit.
Well, I think the explosion of digital media has changed our business. In '95, when I first got here, the way we thought about ourselves, the way we activated ourselves was all around broadcast. So it was all about the television, the game on television, maybe the game on radio, whatever was in the newspaper the next morning. And that was kind of our window of speaking to people, of interacting with clients and customers. And now we've got 14 million people following us on social media. We've got 600,000 or 700,000 people visiting our website every week, unique people visiting our website every week. So we're talking to people 24/7 all around the world. On social media, something like 60% of that 14 million is of people outside the United States. Only 6 or 7% are here in Florida. So the reach that we have is so much bigger than we ever could have imagined 15 years ago. And that's part of it. The other part of it is our profile of our sport, and I give David Stern all the credit for this. Basketball is now the second most popular sport around the world, second only to soccer. And so in 2010, when we got LeBron and Dwayne stayed and Chris came, we were on the front page in Johannesburg during the World Cup. We were on the front page in London during Wimbledon. We've just the reach that we have now is global in every sense. When we went to China 2 years ago for a preseason game, the attention, our guys were treated like the Beatles. It was unbelievable. Scary, actually, a little bit. Their sense of personal space isn't quite the same as ours. And it was phenomenal. And now we've got every year now 120 million people in China are watching our games. It's incredible.
The personal space, other than Yao Ming, I'm sure it's here, but
Right.
it's also here, so it doesn't really matter. And when you look around Sochi, which was kind of interesting over the last couple of weeks, you notice the number of LeBron James jerseys that people have there. That's a fairly obvious story. All right, finally, mega events. We're not getting Final Fours here. We don't have a retractable roof, large facility. It doesn't matter. We may All-Star games if Smoothie King Arena in Smoothie King, really, in New Orleans. That's what they did. They changed the name in New Orleans to Smoothie King. It's a local Louisiana-based corporation. They want to take advantage of it, so that's where the All-Star game was held last time. So maybe we get All-Star in the future. Clearly, the playoffs and the finals. Talk about those special events and what the economics for a region are about those.
Well, we haven't had an All-Star game since '88, primarily because we've got a conflict with the boat show. We need the convention center in order to be able to host All-Star, and we don't have it. With the way things are going in football, they seem to be moving the Super Bowl a little bit further back. So we've actually had some conversations with the league about perhaps doing the All-Star game before the Super Bowl at the end of January, which we would be able to host. The NBA would like to come. I think we'd like to have them. So it's something we're starting to talk about a little more seriously. I don't know that I'm completely educated on the impact of one single event. I will say that the American Airlines Arena, I mean, we're hosting 160 events a year now. We had an economic impact study done by the Washington Economic Group maybe 8 or 9 months ago. Our economic impact of the local community is about $1.4 billion a year now, indirectly or directly supporting over 25,000 jobs. It's big business.
Pretty stout. Final question. So the only stats that matter are championships and perfect seasons. You've got 3 championships. Dolphins have 2. Dolphins have a perfect season. You don't. When's your perfect season?
Highly unlikely.
Never mind. Okay, never mind. Eric Woolworth, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. The smallest bio, but the largest man as far as legacy is concerned. Butch Buchholz, don't kill me, is the chairman of the WGC Cadillac Championship. He was the founder of the Tennis Player Championship, TPC, in South Florida, now known as the Sony Open Miami. 2005 International Tennis Hall of Fame inductee, executive director of the ATP from 79 to 83. He turned pro in 60 and rose as high as number 5 in the world singles rankings. The first man to test out the metal Wilson racket in a tournament before Jimmy Connors did, which is the best story I've ever heard from him in a whole series of stories. Butch was born in St. Louis and is the only person that I've ever met that is transcendent as far as people's perceptions of him, the father of tennis and the stepchild of golf, all at the same time. Butch Buchholz.
Thanks, Rick.
Sorry about the stepchild of golf, but that is accurate. I mean, he's obviously a key guy at Doral, will continue to get better with the WGC and the Gil Hanse design course and the whole thing. Let's talk about the early days of Delray Beach and 86. Tell the story about how it eventually led to the Sony.
Well, history of professional tennis really got started in 1968. I turned pro in 1960, and everybody from Pancho Gonzalez, Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, names that some of you might remember. Once we turned pro, we were not allowed to play the major events. And that didn't start until 1968. So where amateurs and pros could all play together. And we were a small band of players playing all over the world, and the concept of us ever having a major event like a Wimbledon or like a US Open always sort of stuck in my mind that someday we're going to have our own championships. We're going to have our own Wimbledon, being the players. And I must say I borrowed a little bit of a page from Dean Beeman, who created the TPC up in Sawgrass. So when I got the job as head of the ATP, the Players Association, that thought of we're going to build our own stadium, we're going to build our own event, stuck with me. And that was the concept that we're going to have our own event. And for almost 5 years, the players did own that event, the men and women, and we were the first tournament to ever have equal prize money because both the ATP and the WTA owned that event 50-50. I had a license to operate it. And then in 1990, things sort of changed in terms of how the ATP operated and became basically the management of the tour, and they had a conflict. They couldn't own a tournament, so they basically gave it to my brother and I, and we sort of changed things from how stadiums were built and how the sport was actually presented. We recognized we were in the entertainment business, and it wasn't just enough to see people hit tennis balls. We needed to entertain people 6-7 hours a day or all day.
Well, and it's nice perspective to say we were in the stadium business, but to acknowledge somebody that will go over to Key Biscayne and see a major entertainment complex in a, putting it mildly, Byzantine political environment where other people will see mangroves is a pretty significant vision and accomplishment. Tell that story.
Well, we had a few challenges. Actually the property was a dump, and it had been a dump for something like 30 years. And I remember the county parks department people took me to 4 different sites, Haulover Park, Tropical Park, and different places, trying to find a home for this tennis tournament. Our first year was 1985 in Delray Beach, and that facility went bankrupt. We didn't cause it, but they did go bankrupt. Next year we moved to Boca West, and the idea is we were going to move to Weston. That didn't work. So in '87 we moved down to Key Biscayne, and the then head of the WTA, who was the former county manager, Merritt Steerheim, said, "Butch, you need to come down and talk to the Parks Department at Dade County." They took me to all these places, and the last place they took me was to Key Biscayne. And went over the bridge, and I said, "You know what? This is starting to set the tone for what I think should be entertainment." And they took me to the dump site, and we walked all the way back into the property. There was a dead dog, there was cars, there were refrigerators, old sofas, old trailer. We joked about that was going to be our office. And I looked at the county guys and I said, this is perfect. And the reason it was perfect was there were 5,000 parking spots across the street. They said, wonderful. We've been trying to figure out what we're going to do with this dump for all these years. And sure enough, this was May of '86, and we played, I think, in end of February, early March in '87. So the county did an unbelievable job preparing it. We had temporary stands, which we had for a long time. But part of my deal with the ATP and the WTA is I had to build a 14,000-seat stadium. That was part of the deal. And we played the first tournament, and then we ran into some opposition from residents and from a family. And we never got the stadium built until 94. That's when we got it built. So it was a long legal battle. Thankfully, the county and the county manager at the time believed in the event. And it was special because at that time it was the only men and women's event other than the 4 Grand Slams. And we were fortunate that we had a county manager that was willing to fight for it. And it's interesting what Nat is going through with the football stadium. The tennis stadium is now, and the property over there is now going through exactly the same thing. When we built the stadium in '94, this was like state of the art, nothing like it. Now we've got 7 or 8 facilities around the world that are bigger, and Key Biscayne and the Sony Ericsson needs to upgrade what they're doing, and they're in the process of doing it. So once again, we'll take another leap, and people will start following what they've been doing at Key Biscayne.
One of the problems that's interesting in this whole facility development world, one of the biggest issues against getting these deals done quickly is that a lot of these 80s built stadiums still look good, but they're economically obsolescent. And so a lot of the guys, the best advice you could give to, probably not for the record, Arthur Blank in Atlanta, who's got a stadium done, or some of the other guys, hire some people in the middle of the night, do some graffiti, smash the windows, make it look a little different, make it look a little better. It's not that, but that's one of the big issues. While Bush was doing his thing, there were guaranteed baseball stadium at the tip of South Beach. The Miami Screaming Eagles were a hockey team that was going to play at the airport with an arena, and they signed Bernie Perrant, a goaltender who used to play in Philly, except they forgot to fund 3 of the remaining walls of the stadium. And the football stadium was going to be at what was called the Buena Vista site up at 36th Street. All slam dunks. So was this. The only difference is, this got done. And segueing pretty quickly to the international focus, Eric talks about the international brand value of the Heat. The international brand value of the Sony is quite prolific as well, isn't it?
Well, again, we're talking economic impact, and I know it's over $300 million. I think we're somewhere around 38% of the people that come to the tournament do not live in the Tri-County area. The tournament actually sells 14,000 hotel room nights during that period of time. The international television reach is 250, 260 countries. So, I mean, it's huge. And you talk about the branding and the selling of this community. Well, all those great shots of Key Biscayne, the water, et cetera, make it's a great sales piece. And I think also the fact that we've got the Dolphins, we've got the Heat, you've got Homestead. There's a quality of life here with the tennis tournament and the golf tournament that I think people are starting to recognize. And a lot of people weren't sure they want to come and move here for all sorts of reasons. And I think now, South Florida is hot. People want to come here. This is a great place to live. And the one thing I found, coming here, that if you joined the community and became a part of the community, you're welcome, because we're all from someplace else. So you had to try, and you had to put, I joined the chamber, the Beacon Council, and I went to all those meetings. It's really important. But if you become part of the community, you're accepted. And I think what you're doing here is great. There's plenty of people here, there's enough money here from all over the world to make these events successful. It's just a matter of how you do it. If you do it right, we're all going to do fine.
Let's segue for a couple of minutes to the WGC and Doral and golf. There's an event going on right now up in Palm Beach with a record field, the Honda Classic, and we had a Pro-Am on Monday, the Miami Dolphins Pro-Am. It's the 5th year of the cooperation between the Dolphins and the Honda Classic on having an event that ties a couple of franchises together. There will be a lot more of that in this community if all of these entrepreneurs have anything to do with it, and they will. And so one of the interesting things about golf is 1962, the Eastern Open, 53 years and growing, and we talked about the catalyst of Ryder and Tony Burns, but give us your perspective of what the WGC designation has meant and how important Doral is to the fabric of this community.
Well, the WGC is a different type of tournament as compared to what you're normally seeing. There are 4 World Golf Championships in the world. There's one in Tucson, which just finished, which might be leaving and going someplace internationally. Then you have the Miami one, you have Akron, and you have Shanghai. And all of the top players play. And it's done by points, and they all want to play. There's more prize money, there are more FedEx Cup points, and the tour pays for the hospitality when they're here. And the lowest prize money, if you came in last, is $40,000. So we don't have a problem, the tournament doesn't have a problem getting players to play. They want to play. I think one of the things that we're trying to do currently is to make it more of an entertainment event. And I think one of the reasons that they asked me to join the team was that I just felt that Miami is, I love Akron, it's a nice town, but it's not, Miami's not Akron. And I mean, for example, last year, a woman could not get a glass of champagne at the golf tournament. And I just can't envision this lady from Great Britain or Buenos Aires or someplace walking around with a can of Bud. She's just not going to do it. So we're making major changes. We're going to have stone crabs, sushi, Shula burgers, Versailles, doing the Latin Cafe, and it's all part of the entertainment. And it's kind of a long-winded answer to what professional golf and the PGA's tour is looking at now, that we are in the entertainment business. When you go to a Miami Heat game, you are entertained non-stop. And that's where sports is going. And that's what we want to do with the golf event. We've got the best players in the world coming. We got an unbelievable venue. If you go out and see Doral and see Trump and what Trump has done at Doral, this is not a renovation. This is a brand new resort. So I think we're lucky. We've got the new resort. We got a new concept of how we're presenting the golf tournament, and suggest you come out and watch it because it's going to be fun. We got concerts. We got Ivanka Trump is helping us, and we have Caroline Herrera is going to be the celebrity fashion person, and we've got Travis McCoy. My grandkids know these people, but I don't know them. They say they're all very good, so that'll be fun. But, you know, we're in the entertainment business. I think all of us sitting up here have recognized that that's what we are, and yes, we're an asset to the community, but also, you know, the community's been awfully good to us.
So Butch Buchholz starts with metal tennis rackets and ends with stone crabs. He's got a varied answer, and the bottom line is we're all in the entertainment business, and thankfully Butch is in it with everybody here. Thanks again, Butch Buchholz. Appreciate it. So in 1993, the ground was broken after Andrew to build the Homestead-Miami Speedway. And as I said earlier, when you think about it, no one facility, maybe in the country, you could argue Superdome and Katrina, but clearly in the top 2 or 3, has had more of an impact in a recovery, development, catalyst mode than the economics of Homestead International Speedway and what it's done. And Matt Becherer has been the president of Homestead-Miami Speedway after being involved in all aspects of motorsports. Richmond, he went to Michigan State and business administration from the Moore School of Business at University of South Carolina. He attended his first NASCAR race at Bristol and has been sold ever since. And somebody and something that is basically understated for what they do and how they do it, Matt Becherer, the president of Homestead-Miami Speedway. You have my perspective on Homestead and what it meant, but your perspective on Ralph Sanchez and the commitment of what that building meant after Andrew for that region.
Yeah, it's really, it is a remarkable story. You know, at the time, Ralph, and I came to learn this just in the last few years, I didn't realize that when Ralph was promoting all of those amazing races in downtown Miami and out at Tamiami Park, he was in his early 30s. Yeah. And when I think about, you know, what it takes to get things done in this community, especially politically, to be a 32-year-old guy facing all of those obstacles, and Butch, I know you told me before or over lunch how you and Ralph used to get coffee together and sort of commiserate about the challenges. And so, you know, Ralph is producing those events, tons of temporary infrastructure. As you can relate, Butch, that's tons of operational expense, whether you're doing it downtown or out at the park. And suddenly this catastrophe occurs. Hurricane Andrew comes through, and Homestead was literally ground zero. People I've talked to in the community who had lived there for 20 years literally couldn't find their homes. It was flat as far as you could see. People that had spent their whole lives there couldn't find their house. And the base, which is adjacent to where the track is now, was similarly impacted. The base was absolutely devastated. And what the Department of Defense decided to do was essentially lower the activity level of the base from a full-time Air Force base to an Air Reserve base. And what that meant was tens of thousands of families leaving Greater Homestead and moving to other parts of the country. And it was a massive blow for the community. So they gave the city of Homestead a large grant to sort of reboot and start over. Ralph, being the visionary that he was, saw that as an opportunity. He thought, wow, they've got this money, they need a new economic engine, I can bring that economic engine to them, and not only will we put people to work immediately, we'll have this thing that generates hundreds of millions of dollars for decades. So he worked with Miami-Dade County and the city of Homestead to broker sort of a three-way private-public relationship where all three parties contributed. And the way that the deal works was the city of Homestead owns the track, but Ralph owned the rights to operate it. And it was a home run from the start. Big-time IndyCar races, some of NASCAR's secondary races. But over the course of a few years, Ralph realized that he really, you know, it was going to require more capital to keep the thing going. So he ended up selling the operating rights to the track to International Speedway Corporation, the company that I work for. And that was in 1999. That was also the first year we brought in Winston Cup racing, which is the preeminent form of motorsports in North America, today called the Sprint Cup Series, second only to Formula One worldwide. And the promise and the vision and the dream has worked. As you said, Rick, $250 million of economic impact each and every year. That's out of 3 days of activity. We are on track 280 days a year, but those impacts are minor compared to what we do during Ford Championship weekend. And, you know, this is, as you said, going to be the 13th year where NASCAR's crowned their champions down there. That's unprecedented within our business and something that we're incredibly proud of and expect it to occur for years and years to come.
So I remember a little story in the early 80s. There was a hotel called the Columbus Hotel, and it was overlooking downtown Miami. And people would scurry around to be part of the in crowd to get the invitation to be on the balcony of the Columbus Hotel for two things. One would be for the Orange Bowl Parade, back when the Orange Bowl Parade were downtown Miami, and second was the Miami Grand Prix. And anybody on that balcony, which was rickety, by the way, and if it had fallen, 95% of all of the government officials would have gone with it. But if you're on the A-list and you're there, you have arrived, and that was where everybody was. And it was an international melting pot. And so to kind of segue into a little bit of it, 2/3 of your fans come from outside Miami-Dade area. And so the legacy, and again, the building is, this is an event or events that will attract the international flavor, but also really important from a tourism perspective.
Yeah, it is. We, as you said, we do draw 2/3 of our attendees from outside of the region. We sell tickets to all 50 states and more than a dozen foreign countries. The broadcast is on, in not quite as big as the tennis, but it's on in 175 countries in 24 different languages. But the real key, if you talk to a guy like Bill Talbert over at the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, it occurs at a time when studies show most people are making their decision on where to spend their winter vacation. So we have tremendous reach, this tremendous marketing opportunity, not just for us as a speedway, but for all of South Florida, and really a way to showcase ourselves to the world. As one of the panelists mentioned earlier, you know, when they're cutting to commercial during the race, they're showing the palm tree swing and the breeze and the beaches and the great things in the Keys and South Beach and everything downtown, and that's attractive. I mean, trust me, as a guy growing up in Michigan, around middle of November, you're looking at your calendar wondering how you're going to endure that for another 3 or 4 months. And so it's not only scale, Rick, it's also you know, the timing that works so perfectly for us in terms of driving that tourism.
Well, let's take it to the next level, driving business. You know, business development is always anecdotal, and I know the Beacon Council and others have always talked about headquarter relocation decisions, and you look at what it means for a company to come to a community, and their relocation experts will always talk about quality of life as one factor, but you don't know where it weighs in the pecking order. South Florida, we know it's a big deal, but we also have other issues. People come for the beaches and the other entertainment as well. But one of the keys is the kinds of business development opportunities I think you have, where you have platforms for people to do business and expose this community to some international business opportunities you might not otherwise have.
No, that's right. And we do that all a number of different ways. I mean, ultimately what we want to do is we really want to deliver on the promise that South Florida offers. And so with all these people coming into town, we always want to show them, you know, what South Florida is all about. I mean, we've in the past had combination ticket packages with the Heat, with the Dolphins. When we have drivers come into town to advance races, you know, we've taken them over and kicked field goals over at Sun Life Stadium. Butch, I know next week you're bringing some PGA pros down to our place to put them through some high-performance driving skills, and we're going to raise some money for charity doing that. But it, you know, because of the scale of the event and the number of eyeballs that we have, you know, we have a ton, as you know, NASCAR is full of business-to-business opportunities, whether it's at the track, whether it's on a car, whether it's on the driver's suit, you name it. And, you know, those businesses want to be in a place like South Florida. You know, there's a reason the championship is in South Florida. It's so attractive for those people in November to come down, recap their year, kick off the new year in terms of sales meetings or what have you, and it really works well for us.
You got drivers, you got golfers, you got the waiver all set up?
Yeah, we'll make sure they sign them next week.
All right,
that's for
just
sure.
make sure we got that done.
That's right.
It's a news opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. Go down and see that one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sea change this year as it relates to Homestead and the benefit of it. The Ford 400, the Ford Championship weekend, the winner take all, that change that NASCAR did is really going to benefit you and this region, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it in your open that it's really going to help us in NASCAR. I think you're right, it will, but it's also going to help South Florida. What NASCAR has done in the past, they've awarded their championships based on points. You would accumulate points throughout the year and qualify for NASCAR's version of the playoffs, which we call the Chase for the Sprint Cup. This year, they've sort of flipped that on its head, and it's now all about wins. So in order to qualify for those playoffs, it's going to be the person with the most wins. And through the playoffs, they'll be eliminating drivers from contention. So when they get down to Miami, we'll have all 43 cars on track, but only 4 of those drivers will be in contention to win the championship, and they'll all be on equal footing. They won't be separated by points or seeded differently. Literally, it's going to be the best finisher of those 4 wins. And so what that does is it takes an already big event, an already, an event with massive scale, and puts even more attention on it, not just that weekend, but for months out. Typically, in the last several years that I've been a part of this, we've seen a big ramp up of mentions of South Florida and Homestead-Miami Speedway and the championship implications starting in August. Well, now, by winning the Daytona 500 this past weekend, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has all but clinched a spot in the playoffs. People are already talking about us now, and again, keep referring to my friend Bill Talbert. The media value that comes with that is incredible, and it's just gonna skyrocket from here.
The interesting thing about that alignment is, from the certainty perspective, this side of the table has it better or right. Not that they can do anything about it, but Dolphins will be in the playoffs. He guarantees it this year and for the next 50 years. All right, guaranteed. Dolphins will be in the playoffs soon. But it's a brand, and it's a great brand. You're not really sure if you're making your decisions. Super Bowl certain, but that's not here today. Obviously, the Heat's great legacy, great today, but who knows what's going to happen in the finals and semis. So if you make your long-term planning decisions, you hope. You're not sure, but you hope. So tennis, big time, you know who's going to be here. Golf, big time, you know who's going to be here. And he was over here, where you can come to Homestead, but you're not sure if it's going to matter or not. Now it matters.
That's
and
right.
It matters as far as tourism as well.
Well, it matters as far as tourism because these drivers have such massive fan followings. Our fans are incredibly loyal to the sponsors in the sport, and that's what's also going to drive business for us. In the past, you might not know until the week before the race who the contenders are, and it's tough for companies that represent those drivers to activate and really sink their teeth into the event. Now, with this new format, we're going to know who these drivers are weeks out. We may know all 3 of them, actually, a few weeks out, depending on how the eliminations work. But it's going to create a big business opportunity for us, and certainly give people a chance to come down here and experience South Florida.
How fast have you driven?
Well, that's,
Legally.
legally 75, of course.
Yeah, okay. Good answer. On that note, you can believe everything he said and discounted by about 20%. Matt Becherer, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask just a couple questions. I'm going to close it and hopefully open it up for some questions from you guys as well. One question for all of you. I take it from the comments that you all view each other as synergistic and not competitive. Having said that, either disagree if you want to, and assuming you agree, what does the community and region do to help bring you guys even closer together? Is it institutional? Do you guys pick up the phone and call each other? What are some of the suggestions about how to make South Florida an even bigger sports region? Anybody?
I don't think we're competition. I think it's all, again, part of the quality of life. And it's, it's great that, the Heat is as great as they are. The Dolphins, is a great brand. Homestead, is known world. I think it's all great. And I think we all should be very proud that we have a community that has all these things. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree, Butch. I've lived all over the country, including Los Angeles, and I've never been a part of a community where there were so many opportunities, whether it's team sports, whether it's these one-off mega events. Even the youth sports in this area are much more robust than anywhere else I've lived. And, I feel very strongly about that. I don't see it as competition at all. I agree. There's no bigger fan of the Heat than me because if they're doing well, we're all doing well. Same holds true for Doral and the tennis tournament, the Dolphins, everybody. So I'm proud of that and, hope we can perpetuate that certainly moving forward.
You guys?
Well, I think that we all support each other. I mean, when you look at South Florida, we're blessed to have all of the major sports, no matter what anybody says. We're one of the few cities that have that ability. And if you look at the people that participate, they all support each other. The Heat players come to our games, we go to their games, we go out and watch the golf, we go to the race car, the racing. I mean, you name it, we all do it. The biggest issue is always, and I think we all know this, is how the media tries to separate you. And, we've had that discussion quite a few times. And, South Florida is so blessed because you've always had teams or at least a team that's on top. Whether you go back to the University of Miami Dolphins in their day, the Heat now, the World Golf Championship, what we're doing down at Homestead. We've been very blessed as a community where in a lot of cities, if they've got a loser, it's been like that a long time. And then they have no choice but to support people that are losing. We've been very blessed with the opportunities here in sports where no matter what the situation is, there's always a team in the hunt for a championship.
Sir?
There's a school of thought that says that the sports dollar only goes so far, that people are making decisions between playing tennis, playing golf, going to a Dolphins game, a Heat game, going to the racetrack. I don't really subscribe to that theory. I think that it is synergistic. I think the better we all do, the better it is for all of us. And I think, as Nat said, we have the Dolphin players, we have the golfers, the tennis players, the drivers, all come to the arena. We put them up on the big board. We try to draw attention to what everybody else is doing for that reason. Where we do compete a little bit is on the facility side. The stadiums may compete with each other. The two arenas definitely compete with each other for other events. But that's part of life.
That's life, and by the way, what it does do, I guess you could argue from a Adam Smith invisible hand theory. I never took that course very seriously in school, but it also improves the choices for consumers, and it gives consumers better products, and theoretically it drives the price down, but that's another discussion for another day. Believe me, we won't get into that. But, the other interesting thing I wanted to then conclude a question with is that internationally, we all understand the economic numbers. The state, when they tried to quantify it over $35 billion, that's a big number. You don't even want to quibble with that because it's the state number. But the anecdotal, they're playing games in London. The brand internationally, Dolphins, the brand internationally with the Heat is above reproach. You hear Butch talk about both tennis and golf from an international perspective, not only participant, but also viewership and television and awareness. And obviously, Matt, with the 2/3 coming from other places, that's destined for international, maybe a better kept secret, but it's there. How do we collectively make sure the political decision makers understand that the next time someone asks for public assistance in broad terms, it's not just the normal garden variety, let's crank it out and let's figure it out and let's do it because other communities have? I guess what I'm trying to say in conclusion is that 30 years in this community, and you see how these guys have transcended, and this is more than a story, it's actual fact. So how do we ensure the economic development and the sports legacy for the next 50 years, I would say?
You mind?
No.
I think that, listen, every case has to be made on its own. But I would hope at this point that any of the Miami-Dade commissioners that were sitting on the dais in 96 or 7, whenever it was that we greenlighted the American Airlines Arena, are really proud of the vote they cast. It's been an incredibly successful public-private partnership. Compared to if you subscribe to the theory that local governments should be doing things to drive the local economy, you're talking about a $1.4 billion annual economic impact that we're throwing off, and they've invested nowhere near that and never will on a total basis. So it's a great story, and I wish that they would point to that one instead of some of the other ones they point to when they talk about it.
Media, hear that? Oh, there. Nat, comment?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Eric. Every case is different. I think we're the one facility that our owner owns the facility. But by the same token, if you agree with Eric's theory with the fact that it's what you bring to South Florida, what the events bring to South Florida, you're talking a couple $2 billion a year with all the major events and everything else that we bring here. And ironically, when we're asking for money, we're not asking taxpayers to give us any money. We're asking for some of the bed tax that we help create to help us fix our facilities so that we can continue to compete and continue to bring in these major events. And without the public, it's going to be very impossible to do.
Rick, I would ask them what they're going to do for the community. I think you'd be and I was surprised. Last year, the Cadillac World Golf Championships gave $875 million to, $875,000 to the community. We're hoping to leave $1 million this year. Tennis, we built the Ashbuckles Tennis Center in Alabama. I know the Dolphins and the Heat do all sorts of things charity-wise. So you guys do the same thing. So I'd ask, somebody wants to come in, yes, join the fabric, be part of the community, but also what are you going to leave behind?
Matt, clean up, last comment.
Yeah, I think Garrick hit the nail on the head. I mean, we all need to be looked at on an individual basis. Like you said, Butch, we put hundreds of thousands of dollars back into the community every year. I think, as Eric said, the commissioners would look at our facility, and I know the Homestead City Council certainly does, as something that they're very proud of. And I think it's a shame when we all, while we all are sports venues, I think it's a shame when we all sort of get lumped in as the same. I think many of us are doing some amazing things, and it's disappointing when there's sort of a shadow over us based on maybe a short-term memory. I think if people really look back at what's transpired at all four of these venues, frankly, since their inception, it's pretty amazing. And if you sort of look at it individually, I think it's a pretty easy case to make.
It's hard to believe that in the last 45, 50 years, we were in mid-60s, as we said, talking about South Florida as if everyone was from somewhere else, as if the politicians weren't able to get along, as if the distractions somehow minimized our chances of getting Major League Sports franchises and events, and as if the geographical rivalries meant that we were not going to be in the big leagues. And $36 billion or so later, we've transcended that and are moving to a next level of sports development. And thanks to Nat Moore and Eric Woolworth and Butch Buchholz and Matt Becherer, who are not only pioneers but entrepreneurs to continue this, we're well on the way to keeping our rightful position as a tourism and economic development leader around the country and around the world. Thank you all for participating in the Sports Business Insider Series. See you next time. We've got like 10 minutes. If you guys are willing, if somebody has any questions, or we can do it afterward. Anybody have any questions we want to do? Yes, ma'am.
The new Marine Stadium that is going to be refurbished and rebuilt, how do you see that affecting? You had mentioned that there is some competition with bringing events to certain stadiums. That has had a very rich history. Do you see that having an impact, or do you see it as an added value, obviously, to our city as a fabulous new venue?
I think the Marine Stadium is really cool. And it only seats, I think, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people, so we would not see it as competition. We would see it as an added value to the local community. Absolutely.
It was one of the coolest places to see concerts by boat or otherwise when I was growing up, back when they first invented music. Anybody? Yeah.
For Nat, what more specifically does the NFL want out of the stadium? When you talk about an economic upgrade, we're talking about, we saw that proposal for a roof. Does it have to be covered? What are they looking for more specifically?
Well, I think it's just renovating the facility. It's going on 28 years old now. You look at the escalators, we've got issues. We are also one of the few stadiums that, for HD lighting, we have to bring in lighting. I mean, the suites are old and antiquated. I mean, our field is a 40-yard, our sidelines is 40 yards from the field. We've got probably the least amount of seats in the lower bowl compared to all other stadiums. Because when the stadium was retrofitted, it was retrofitted for baseball, which is no longer there. And now our fans are so far removed, the best seats are the farthest from the field. So when you start to look at that and all of the changes and all the new bells and whistles that the new stadiums are getting, we're behind the times. And they've just come in and said that, that like to see the upgrade. And I think the roof is twofold, and most people won't say this, but I will, because I'm a season ticket holder. I've been a season ticket holder since 1987. So, I've got 4 seats in the club seat area, the end zone. One of the things about the actual roof is twofold. It's not just about rain. It's something that as you go forward and you're looking at trying to get the World Cup and you're trying to get all of these other events where basically they have some type of covering for the fans. And as a season ticket holder, it makes my seats better. It makes the seats that I like to give to someone when it's very hot and we play at 1 o'clock, they're covered. They're in the shade. I know it would do wonders for the University of Miami, who plays their games at 12 o'clock noon. It's not like the old Orange Bowl. Today, it's much harder than it used to be. And I can tell you, when we do play some of those 1 o'clock games, there's people that we really have to take out of the stadium because of heat exhaustion. So there's a lot of different issues. I mean, just go back and think. Something built 28 years ago, how does it work today?
And built privately, so that's another expectation level too, and that's another issue for obviously another day. These debates will continue to go on. This is the 5th chapter of a book that'll have 10 or 20 chapters in it, and I guess the bottom line is just be happy where we are and how far we've come since the mid-1960s, and thank all of you for being here, and speak with you soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Mark Miles, is he part of?
Good.